You don't lack discipline. You're just surrounded by friction. That's the part most people never consider. When someone fails to stay consistent, the immediate explanation is always the same. Laziness, weak willpower, lack of motivation. But those explanations assume something dangerous. They assume behavior is controlled entirely by the person. It isn't. Behavior is heavily controlled by the environment. And once you understand this, discipline stops looking like a personality trait and starts looking like a design problem. Most people try to fix themselves. Very few people try to fix their environment. That's where the mistake begins. The brain is not built to fight its surroundings. It is built to respond to them. Every object in your environment quietly influences your behavior. Your phone on the desk, the open browser tab, the snack within reach, the clutter in your workspace. Each one adds friction to the actions that matter, or removes friction from the ones that don't. The brain constantly searches for the easiest available action, not the most meaningful one, the easiest one. That's not weakness, that's efficiency. Your brain is designed to conserve energy whenever possible, which means the path of least resistance usually wins. And if the path of least resistance leads to distraction, procrastination, or comfort, discipline becomes incredibly difficult. Not because you're incapable, but because your environment is working against you. Think about how most people try to change their lives. They make a decision. Tomorrow I'll start waking up early. Tomorrow I'll study. Tomorrow I'll go to the gym. The plan sounds reasonable, but nothing in the environment changes. The phone stays next to the bed. The desk remains cluttered. The snacks stay visible. The social media apps remain one tap away. So the next morning arrives, and the environment quietly pulls behavior back to its default state. Comfort, convenience, distraction. This is where most people start blaming themselves. But the real issue is structural. You tried to change behavior without changing the system around it. Disciplined people rarely rely on willpower. What they do instead is subtle but powerful. They remove friction, not from the behaviors they want to avoid, from the behaviors they want to repeat. Gym clothes placed near the door, phone left in another room, workspace kept intentionally simple, healthy food visible, distractions hidden. These are not acts of motivation, they are acts of design. When the environment supports the right action, discipline becomes dramatically easier. Not perfect, but easier. And easier actions are repeated actions. There's a principle in behavioral psychology called choice architecture. It means the way choices are presented determines the behavior that follows. If unhealthy food is placed at eye level in a store, it sells more. If stairs are placed near the entrance of a building, people take them more often. If a phone sits within reach while working, attention shifts toward it. The environment quietly shapes decisions, often without awareness. This is why small environmental adjustments can create massive behavioral change. You don't need stronger willpower, you need better default options. Consider two people trying to study. One studies at a clean desk in a quiet room with their phone in another space. The other studies in bed with notifications active and multiple tabs open. The second person might be just as intelligent, just as capable. But their environment multiplies distraction. The effort required to stay focused becomes enormous. Eventually, the brain gives up, not from weakness, from overload. This is what friction looks like. Discipline thrives in environments where the next correct action is obvious. You sit down. The notebook is already there. The task is already defined. The distractions are already removed. The decision has already been made. There is nothing left to negotiate. You simply begin. And the absence of negotiation is what creates consistency. Most people lose discipline during negotiation. Should I start now? Maybe later. Maybe after one more video. The longer the negotiation, the weaker the action. Environment design eliminates negotiation. And when negotiation disappears, behavior becomes automatic. This is why systems matter more than intention. Intentions depend on emotion. Systems depend on structure. Emotion fluctuates. Structure remains stable. When your environment consistently nudges you toward the right behavior, discipline stops feeling like effort. It becomes routine, and routines build identity. Over time, something interesting happens. When behavior becomes consistent, the brain updates its self-image. You begin to think differently about yourself. I am someone who trains regularly. I am someone who focuses. I am someone who follows through. This identity doesn't appear suddenly. It emerges from repeated evidence. And repeated evidence is easier to generate when the environment supports the behavior. If you want to improve discipline, start with one simple question. What in my environment is making the wrong behavior easier? And what could make the right behavior easier instead? Move distractions further away. Bring productive tools closer. Simplify your workspace. Design your defaults. Small environmental changes create large behavioral shifts over time. You don't lack discipline. You lack supportive structure. Fix the structure, and discipline stops being a struggle. It becomes the natural outcome. Because in the end, behavior follows environment, always. If this perspective helped you see discipline differently, consider subscribing to Discipline Default for calm, psychology-driven insights on focus, structure, and long-term self-mastery.